At 9:16 on the morning of my wedding, my boss entered the bridal suite, placed a termination letter beside my veil and said, "You're no longer welcome in this building." I looked at him, then at the small brass key lying beneath the letter. The key belonged to the building. So did I. Grant Vail did not know either of those things yet. He stood in front of the mirror wearing a charcoal suit and the confident expression he used whenever he believed a decision could no longer be challenged. Behind him, my wedding dress hung beside the window. White silk. Long sleeves. Simple pearl buttons. My bridesmaid Maya stood near the makeup table holding a curling iron she had forgotten to turn off. My fiancé, Daniel, was downstairs greeting guests in the rooftop conservatory. And my boss had chosen that moment to fire me. "Why are you here?" I asked. Grant adjusted his cuff. "I wanted to handle this personally. On my wedding day? I was told you would be unavailable next week. That's generally what a honeymoon means." He ignored the comment and pushed the letter closer. "Your employment with Vail Urban Design ends immediately." I read the first line. Termination for breach of confidentiality, insubordination, and unauthorized access to executive financial records. I looked up. "I'm the director of operations. Financial records are part of my job. Not the ones you accessed." "You mean the vendor accounts?" His expression changed slightly. "Only slightly. But enough." For 6 weeks, I had been reviewing payments connected to our largest redevelopment project. The numbers did not make sense. 3 consulting companies had received nearly $2 million. None had employees. None had working websites. And all 3 were registered to the same mailbox used by Grant's brother-in-law. When I asked for supporting invoices, Grant told me the project was too complex for routine operational review. I kept reviewing it anyway. 2 days earlier, I discovered that one of the fake vendors had billed our company for work supposedly completed inside the building where we rented 6 floors. Work that had never happened. I asked accounting for proof of services. I said, "You copied restricted documents. I preserved them after you ordered accounting to delete the folder." Maya quietly placed the curling iron on the table. Grant glanced toward her. "This conversation is confidential. She's my maid of honor. She is not an employee. That makes her safer than most people in your company." His eyes returned to me. "You have until noon to return your laptop, security card, and company phone." "My laptop is in my apartment. Security will collect it. No one is entering my apartment. It contains company property. It also contains my personal property." His voice became colder. "Claire, do not turn an ordinary termination into something more damaging." Ordinary. My boss had entered my wedding suite inside the Marlowe building and fired me 3 hours before the ceremony. He expected me to cry. Beg. Sign the papers quickly so I could return to the dress, flowers, and guests waiting upstairs. Grant believed embarrassment made people cooperative. He was not entirely wrong. For 10 years, I had protected his company from his worst instincts because I hated public conflict. I corrected budgets quietly. Negotiated with angry vendors privately. Rehired employees he dismissed during emotional meetings. When Grant made a mistake, I turned it into a system improvement. When I made one, he called it evidence that I lacked executive judgment. I had spent a decade making him appear more capable than he was. Now he had fired me before I could expose the first mistake too large to repair. I folded the termination letter. "Who approved this?" "I did. The board." "You report to me." "I also serve as corporate compliance officer." "Not anymore." Was Helen Ward notified? Helen chaired the audit committee. She had been asking questions about the same vendor accounts. Grant smiled. "The board will receive an appropriate summary." "Written by you?" "Written by counsel. Leonard Price." His smile disappeared. Leonard was Grant's personal attorney. He also represented 2 of the fake consulting companies. Grant reached into his jacket and placed another document on the table. A separation agreement. In exchange for 6 months of salary, I would waive all claims against the company, surrender copies of corporate records, accept a 3-year non-compete, and agree not to discuss internal financial matters. "You want me to sign this today?" "It is generous. You're asking me to remain silent about possible fraud. I'm asking you to avoid making reckless accusations. What happens if I don't sign?" You leave with nothing. I looked around the bridal suite. The flowers. The dress. The champagne Maya had opened before Grant arrived. 10 years of employment reduced to a threat delivered beside my wedding shoes. Then I heard my grandmother's voice in my memory. Never argue with someone who is still volunteering evidence. She had owned the Marlowe building for 38 years. Almost no one knew. The official owner was listed as Marlowe Heritage Properties, a private holding company managed through a trust. My grandmother believed tenants behaved differently when they knew the owner's name. So she remained invisible. After she died, the building passed to my mother. When my mother died 11 months earlier, it passed to me. I became the sole beneficiary and managing owner. Grant knew my mother had left me some property. He believed it was a small apartment building in another city. He did not know the company he led had paid rent to my family for almost 20 years. He did not know I had been reviewing his lease violations with Naomi Reed, the trust's attorney. And he did not know that the brass key beneath his termination letter opened every mechanical room, service corridor, and executive floor in the building. I picked it up. Grant watched me. What is that? An old key. To what? My grandmother's office. I slipped it into the pocket of my robe. He held out his hand. Your security card. I'll return it after the ceremony. Now. You've already terminated my access. That isn't the point. No. Control is. Maya looked at me through the mirror. I could see the question on her face. Should she call Daniel? Should she call security? Should she throw Grant's expensive briefcase through the window? I gave her a small shake of my head. Grant gathered the unsigned agreement. You have 1 hour to reconsider. I'm getting married in 3. You're holding the ceremony on property used by the company. The rooftop venue is independently operated. Vale Urban Design arranged the event discount. No, I did. He laughed. You could not afford this venue without our corporate relationship. That was when I realized Grant believed the company had given me the wedding. The rooftop conservatory normally cost more than I would spend on one day. But I had paid only the operating expenses. As I owned it. Grant walked toward the door. After noon, security will treat you as an unauthorized visitor. I looked at his back. You said I'm no longer welcome in this building. He stopped. Yes. Are you sure? He turned. What kind of question is that? The kind people should answer carefully. His eyes narrowed. Sign the agreement, Claire. Then he left. The door closed. Maya stared at me. What just happened? I got fired. 3 hours before your wedding. Yes. Are we canceling? The wedding. The wedding, the reception, his life. Choose one. I laughed despite myself. Then my hands began shaking. Not because I wanted the job back. Because betrayal hurts even when you have the documents to defeat it. I had worked late through illnesses, holidays, and family funerals. When Grant's wife left him, I ran the company while he disappeared for 6 weeks. When investors nearly withdrew from the harbor project, I spent 72 hours rebuilding the proposal. When my mother was dying, I answered emails from the hospital corridor because Grant said leadership required sacrifice. He fired me on the one morning I had chosen not to be useful to him. Maya wrapped a robe around my shoulders. Call Naomi. I already texted her. When he placed the first document on the table. My phone rang. Naomi Reed. She did not begin with hello. Did you sign anything? No. Did he take your devices? No. Did he explain the financial allegation? He accused me of unauthorized access. Good. How is that good? He has now formally connected your termination to the records covered by the board's preservation request. I sat beside the window. What happens next? I'm filing the whistleblower notice and notifying Helen. And the building? Naomi paused. Grant signed something yesterday. My stomach tightened. What? A lease amendment. Vale Urban Design's current lease covered floors 4 through 9. The company was behind on operating payments and had repeatedly violated renovation restrictions. Grant had been negotiating to expand into floors 10 and 11. I had refused to approve the expansion as building owner until the company produced audited financial statements. Because he did not know I was the owner, he believed an outside trustee was delaying him. What did he sign? I asked again. A document claiming Vale Urban Design had already received landlord consent to sublease 2 floors to a hotel operator. They haven't. I know. Who signed for the landlord? A woman named Evelyn Mercer. My mother's name. My dead mother's name. The room became very still. He forged her signature? It appears so. Why? The hotel operator paid a $2 million advance. I closed my eyes. Grant had used fake landlord approval to raise money. The same missing money he was hiding through false vendors. Naomi continued. The funds entered Vale's account and were transferred through the 3 consulting companies you flagged. He fired me because I found the complete trail. Yes. Can we stop the sublease? It was never valid. What about Vale's lease? The fraud clause permits immediate termination. Maya sat across from me. She could hear only my side of the conversation, but her expression changed when she saw mine. Do it, I said. Naomi remained silent. Terminate the lease, I repeated. That removes almost 200 employees from 6 floors. I don't want employees punished. Then we need a controlled transition. How fast? I can suspend Vale's expansion rights today, freeze all construction access, and deliver a default notice. Full termination would allow 30 days unless the board cooperates. Do that. There is another issue. Of course there is. Grant scheduled a company announcement in the rooftop conservatory at 5. My reception begins at 4. He told investors the company secured naming rights to the rooftop and 2 additional floors. I stared at the flowers beside my dress. He scheduled an investor presentation during my wedding reception? The venue manager believed it was part of your event. Grant planned to fire me before the wedding, then use my reception in my building to announce an expansion supported by forged consent from my dead mother. He had not simply chosen my wedding day because I was vulnerable. He chose it because the building was filled with board members, investors, clients, and press-connected guests. My celebration was supposed to become his corporate stage. Naomi's voice softened. We can cancel his access now. No. Claire. Let him present. He may repeat false claims publicly. Good. That creates more evidence, but it also creates risk. I spent 10 years cleaning up after him before anyone could see the mess. I looked at my wedding dress. Today I'm done cleaning. At noon, Grant's assistant collected my company phone and laptop from Daniel. Daniel still did not know I had been fired. I had asked Maya not to tell him until I could do it myself. At 12:30, I entered the small library beside the rooftop conservatory wearing my wedding dress. Daniel stood by the window in a navy suit. He was 45, patient, and one of the few people who never treated my independence as an invitation to neglect me. He smiled when he saw me. Then his expression changed. What happened? My boss fired me. Today. This morning. He stared at me. Why are you still wearing the dress? Because I still want to marry you. That wasn't what I meant. I know. I explained the vendor accounts. The forged signature. The lease. The fact that the company planned to use our reception for an investor announcement. Daniel listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked, Do you want me to remove him? I want him to speak. Do you want me beside you? Yes. That was all. No lecture about revenge. No demand that I calm down. No attempt to take control. He simply offered presence. At 2 o'clock, we were married beneath the conservatory's glass roof. Rain moved across the city beyond the windows. Naomi sat in the second row. Helen Ward sat behind her. Grant did not attend the ceremony. He arrived during the reception. At 4:52, while Daniel and I were cutting the cake, Grant entered with Leonard Price for investors and a presentation team carrying display boards. He had changed into a black dinner jacket. He looked less like a man who had fired the bride and more like a guest arriving to receive an award. Maya whispered. He actually came. Yes. Can I push him down the service stairs? Not yet. Grant approached me. Claire, congratulations. Thank you. He looked at Daniel. I hope the employment matter does not affect our professional relationship. Daniel's expression remained calm. What professional relationship? Grant turned back to me. Have you reconsidered the agreement? No. His smile tightened. This is not the place. You chose the place. A technician connected his laptop to the conservatory screen. Guests began looking toward the display. Grant tapped his champagne glass with a spoon. I apologize for briefly interrupting the celebration. He did not sound apologetic. But today represents more than a personal beginning. It also marks a major new chapter for Vale Urban Design and the Marlowe Building. Naomi stood near the back doors holding a blue folder. Helen folded her arms. Grant continued. For nearly 20 years, Vale Urban Design has called this property home. Today, I'm proud to announce that we have secured 2 additional floors, exclusive rooftop branding rights, and a long-term hospitality partnership that will transform this building into the center of our city's creative district. Polite applause came from people who did not understand why an office presentation had interrupted a wedding. The screen displayed renovation plans. A luxury private club on floor 10. Executive suites on 11. A new illuminated sign across the building's historic stone facade. All prohibited by the building covenant. Grant invited the investors forward. Then his phone rang. The same unfamiliar number from the morning. He looked toward Naomi. She held her own phone to her ear. Grant declined the call. The conservatory speakers activated instead. Our venue manager had connected Naomi to the audio system. Her voice filled the room. Mr. Vale, you appear to be presenting changes to a property without the owner's consent. Grant stared toward the sound booth. Turn that off. No one moved. Naomi walked forward. I'm Naomi Reed, counsel for Marlowe Heritage Properties. Grant forced a laugh. This is a private event. Yes, Naomi said. Held by the owner. He looked toward the venue manager. What is she talking about? Naomi handed him the default notice. Your expansion approval is fraudulent. The signature belongs to a woman who died 11 months ago. The room became silent. Leonard Price moved toward the exit. Helen Ward stepped into his path. You should stay. Grant scanned the document. This is a misunderstanding. Naomi continued. The $2 million hotel advance has been frozen. Construction access is suspended. Vale Urban Design's lease is under formal default review. An investor closed his folder. Grant looked at me. You did this. I put down the cake knife. No. I looked at the plans displayed behind him. You did. His face hardened. Claire is a former employee with no authority to interfere in this transaction. Naomi answered. She is not speaking as an employee. Grant turned toward her. Then in what capacity? Naomi looked at me. The entire room followed her gaze. I removed the small brass key from the pocket hidden inside my wedding dress. Then I placed it on the table beside the cake. As the owner of the building. Grant laughed. It was not natural laughter. It was the sound of someone rejecting information before his mind had time to examine it. You don't own this building. I do. Marlowe Heritage Properties owns it. I own Marlowe Heritage Properties. That company is controlled by an estate trust. I'm the sole beneficiary and managing owner. His eyes moved toward Naomi. Is this some kind of performance? Naomi removed a certified trust declaration from the blue folder. No. She handed it to Helen first. Helen examined the ownership schedule. Then she looked at me. How long? 11 months. You've been our landlord for almost a year? Yes. Grant snatched the document from her. My name appeared beneath the company seal. Claire Elise Mercer, sole managing beneficiary. The color left his face. He flipped through the pages as though another name might appear. You concealed this. The lease requires the landlord's legal identity, not the personal identity of every trust beneficiary. You reviewed our company records while owning the building. I reviewed company records because I was director of operations. This is a conflict of interest. Finding fraud is not a conflict. You manipulated the lease process. I refused to approve expansion because you would not provide audited statements. You had already decided to reject it. No. I was waiting for accurate information. Grant looked at the guests. Then at his investors. He needed to regain control of the room. He straightened his jacket. Even if Claire has an ownership interest, the company acted in reliance on documents provided by the landlord's representatives. Naomi held up the forged approval. This signature belongs to Claire's deceased mother. Leonard spoke for the first time. My office received that document from Vale personnel. Grant looked at him. You prepared the amendment. I prepared a draft based on representations that landlord approval existed. You said it was sufficient. I said it required verification. Grant turned toward his assistant. She stood beside the presentation equipment, pale and silent. Who gave Leonard the signed page? No one answered. Helen stepped forward. The board will investigate that. Right now, I want to know why a $2 million advance was transferred through unapproved vendors. Grant's expression changed. This is not a board meeting. It is now. The rooftop conservatory contained 3 Vale board members, 2 major investors, the chair of the audit committee, the company attorney, and nearly 40 employees. Grant had gathered his own witnesses. He had done it to impress them. Naomi placed another file on the cake table. The landlord's consent was forged on March 7th. The hotel advance was received on March 9th. Within 48 hours, funds were sent to Northbridge Strategy, Price Advisory, and Vale Facilities Group. Helen opened the file. Vale Facilities Group is not one of our subsidiaries. I answered. It belongs to Grant's brother-in-law. Guests began whispering. Grant pointed toward me. She stole confidential records. I preserved records scheduled for deletion. That is a lie. The presentation screen changed. Maya stood near the laptop with the remote. She had replaced Grant's resort renderings with a screenshot of an email. Delete the vendor support folder before Friday's audit review. The sender was Grant. The recipient was the finance director. Grant looked at Maya. Where did you get that? I forwarded it to myself after you fired me, I said. You admitted taking company property. I submitted it to the audit chair and counsel under the whistleblower policy. Helen examined the timestamp. Then she looked at Grant. Why did you order the folder deleted? I did not. That message is being taken out of context. Then provide the context. He had none. Daniel stood beside me. Not in front. Not speaking for me. Just beside me. Grant noticed. You knew about this? He asked Daniel. I learned today. And you allowed her to turn your wedding into a corporate ambush? Daniel looked toward the screen. You scheduled the presentation. Grant opened his mouth. Then closed it. For years he had survived by making other people explain themselves. Now every explanation returned to him. Helen announced that the board would convene immediately in the conference suite on floor 12. Grant objected. You cannot call a board meeting without notice. Emergency authority permits it when there is evidence of financial misconduct. This is my company. Helen replied. No. You manage a company owned by shareholders. That sentence struck him harder than the building revelation. Grant believed leadership and ownership were the same thing. He had made the same mistake with me. He assumed paying my salary meant he owned my judgment. He assumed renting 6 floors meant he controlled the building. He assumed accessing money meant he was entitled to spend it. The reception continued while the board met upstairs. Maya ordered the band to play. Daniel's sister cut the remaining cake. Naomi asked whether I wanted to attend the board meeting. I was fired. You are also the whistleblower and landlord. I'll testify when requested. For the first time that day I sat down. Daniel brought me a plate of food. You haven't eaten. My company may collapse. It isn't your company anymore. My building may lose its largest tenant. That is a real problem. I looked at him. You don't have to sound so calm. Would panic improve the lease? No. Then eat. I laughed. That small ordinary moment saved the evening. Not the documents. Not Grant's face when he learned the truth. A plate of food placed in front of me by someone who cared whether I had eaten, even while millions of dollars and 10 years of work shifted around us. At 7:40, Helen asked me to join the board upstairs. Grant sat at the far end of the conference table. His dinner jacket was unbuttoned. Leonard had moved to a separate chair, no longer appearing to represent him personally. The finance director joined by video. She confirmed Grant instructed her to delete the vendor records. She had refused. Grant then asked the information technology manager to remove the backup. The manager preserved a copy. The executive assistant admitted she copied my mother's signature from an old lease guarantee. Grant told her it was a temporary placeholder and that landlord approval would be secured later. The hotel operator's attorney confirmed that Grant represented the approval as final. Then Helen asked me about my termination. Did Grant provide prior disciplinary warnings? No. Any performance concerns? No. Did your termination occur after you requested vendor documentation? Yes. When? 48 hours later. Grant leaned forward. Claire repeatedly exceeded her authority. Helen looked at him. She was Director of Operations and Compliance Officer. She was also secretly our landlord. I did not know that until tonight, and I still understood that financial review was within her duties. Grant looked toward me. You planned this from the beginning. No. You joined Vale because your family owned the building. I joined Vale 7 years before my mother inherited it. You remained after becoming owner. My ownership changed 11 months ago. The lease had independent management. Naomi handled negotiations. You could have disclosed it. My mother asked me not to until the estate settled. You wanted power over me. I stared at him. Grant, I spent 10 years giving you credit for work I did. The room became quiet. I corrected your budgets without embarrassing you. Repaired vendor relationships you damaged. Protected employees from decisions made during your worst moods. When I inherited the building, I kept the lease process independent because I did not want personal ownership to affect my work. I placed the termination letter on the table. You fired me on my wedding day because you believed I had discovered too much and would be too distracted to fight. He looked away. That was not the reason. Then why today? No answer. Helen asked. Did you know Claire's wedding was scheduled in the rooftop venue? Obviously. Did you schedule the investor announcement here because board members would be present? It was an efficient opportunity. Did you terminate Claire before the announcement to prevent her from challenging the documents? Grant stared at the table. Leonard whispered. You should not answer without personal counsel. Silence became the answer. The board voted. Grant was suspended as chief executive pending an independent investigation. His building access was restricted to supervised retrieval of personal belongings. The expansion agreement was cancelled. The fake vendors were frozen. The hotel operator demanded repayment. Then the board addressed my position. Helen turned toward me. We would like you to remain available as interim operations director. Grant laughed bitterly. There it is. I did not respond to him. I was fired, I said. The board can reverse the termination. No. Helen looked surprised. You do not want your job back? I want the termination formally classified as retaliation. I want my earned compensation paid. I want the non-compete withdrawn. But I do not want to return as an employee. You've spent 10 years here. Yes. And you're prepared to leave? I looked through the conference room window at the city lights. Below us, my wedding guests were dancing beneath the glass roof. I should have left years ago. Grant shook his head. You'll regret walking away when the company stabilizes. I looked at him. You still think leaving you means losing something? He went silent. The board accepted my terms. Vale Urban Design would remain in the building temporarily under independent management. No immediate eviction. No employees locked out. No dramatic removal of desks. The company had 30 days to produce complete financial records and a plan to cure the lease defaults. Grant alone lost access that night. At 9:15, building security escorted him to the lobby. I went downstairs with Naomi. Grant stood beside the revolving doors holding a cardboard box. The same kind of box employees carried after he fired them. He looked at me. You enjoyed this? No. You made sure everyone saw. You chose a public presentation. You could have warned me privately. I asked about the vendor accounts privately. That was different. It always is when you're the person being protected. He looked toward the brass key in my hand. How much is this building worth? Why? Just answer. About $42 million. He laughed softly. You let me pay you a salary while sitting on a $42 million asset. I worked for my salary. You never needed the job. That doesn't mean you had the right to mistreat me. He shifted the box. I made you. No. The answer came easily. I made your company easier to believe in. His expression changed. Security opened the door. Grant walked into the rain. I watched until the revolving door completed one full turn. Then I returned to my wedding. The investigation lasted 9 months. Grant claimed the forged signature was an administrative error. The executive assistant produced voice messages proving he ordered her to use my mother's prior signature page. He claimed the fake vendors provided confidential strategic services. Bank records showed most of the money paid personal debts connected to his brother-in-law and funded the renovation of Grant's country house. He claimed my termination was based on performance. My reviews contained 10 years of excellent ratings. The board formally classified the firing as retaliation. Vale Urban Design repaid the hotel advance through insurance, asset sales, and the recovery of funds from the fake vendors. The company survived. That mattered to me. Not because I wanted Grant's legacy protected. Because 186 employees had not participated in his fraud. The company moved from 6 floors to 4. An independent chief executive replaced Grant. The illuminated rooftop sign was never installed. The private club was never built. The glass conservatory remained a venue for weddings, community dinners, and public events. Grant resigned before the board could terminate him permanently. His professional license was reviewed. The financial misconduct became part of a separate legal case. He sent me one letter. It began, "You used your ownership to humiliate me." I stopped reading. People who confuse consequences with humiliation rarely understand why their apologies fail. My employment settlement paid the salary and bonus I had earned. I did not need the money. That did not make it less mine. I used part of it to create a legal and emergency fund for employees facing workplace retaliation. Naomi helped structure it independently. Maya named it the Open Door Fund. Because he told you that you weren't welcome in your own building, she said. I like the name. 3 months after the wedding, I moved into my grandmother's old office on the 2nd floor. The room had been closed since her death. Dark wooden shelves. A wide desk. A wall of original blueprints. The brass key opened a small cabinet beside the fireplace. Inside, I found her property ledgers and a handwritten note. A building is not successful because important people rent the top floors. It is successful when the people inside it are treated as though their work matters. My grandmother had operated differently from most landlords. She learned the names of maintenance workers. Kept rents lower for small local businesses. Refused offers to replace the street-level shops with luxury retailers. I understood why she hid her identity. But I also saw the cost of too much secrecy. Grant had forged my mother's name because he believed the landlord was an abstract company that could be manipulated. Employees reported problems to management teams that never met the owner. Tenants believed decisions came from an invisible trust. I decided to change that. Marlowe Heritage Properties opened an office inside the building. Not on the top floor. On the 2nd beside the elevators. My name appeared on the glass door. Claire Mercer, managing owner. I hired an independent property team. Published a clear approval process. Created anonymous reporting channels for tenants and workers. No major lease amendment could be signed by one person. No dead person's signature could be accepted without direct verification. That rule should have been obvious. The fact that we needed to write it proved how easily assumptions become vulnerabilities. Daniel and I postponed our honeymoon for 2 weeks. Not because of the investigation. Because the wedding photographs took longer to edit after Maya removed Grant from the background of 17 pictures. When we finally traveled, we went somewhere without office towers. A small coastal town. No presentations. No investors. No legal folders. On our first evening, Daniel asked, "Do you miss the company?" "Yes." "Do you want to go back?" "No." Both answers were true. Leaving a harmful place does not erase the good work you performed there. It does not erase the people you loved. Or the version of yourself who believed loyalty would eventually be rewarded. I missed the employees. The projects. The rush of solving a problem everyone else considered impossible. I did not miss being valued only when I made someone else look successful. 6 months later, Helen visited my office. Vale Urban Design's new chief executive wanted to renew the reduced lease. The company had stabilized. Helen placed the proposal on my desk. "You could charge us more," she said. "I know. Why aren't you?" "Because the employees already paid enough for Grant's decisions." She smiled. He used to say your empathy made you weak in negotiations. Grant believed anything he couldn't exploit was weakness. The company would like you to consult on the compliance restructure. No. Not even temporarily? No. She nodded. You learned to say that quickly. I had an excellent teacher. She looked toward the wall where my termination letter had been framed. I did not frame it as a trophy. I framed it beside my grandmother's note. One document said I was no longer welcome. The other reminded me whose judgment mattered. A year after the wedding, the rooftop conservatory hosted the first open-door fund dinner. Employees from different companies attended. Some had reported harassment. Some wage theft. Some unsafe working conditions. Several had been fired for asking questions. Naomi spoke about retaliation laws. Maya managed the event. Daniel sat at the same table where we had cut our wedding cake. Near the end of the evening, a young woman approached me. Her name was Elise. She worked for a technology company renting the 8th floor. My manager told me I should be grateful to have a job, she said. What happened? I reported false billing. I looked at Naomi. She was already reaching for a business card. Elise lowered her voice. I'm scared they'll fire me. They might, I said. Her face fell. I continued. But being afraid does not mean you are wrong. And losing access to one office does not mean you lose your value. She glanced around the conservatory. Is it true your boss fired you here? In the room downstairs. And then you evicted his company? No. That rumor had become more dramatic every time someone repeated it. I protected the employees and removed the person responsible. Why? Because revenge that harms innocent people is only another form of bad leadership. She nodded slowly. I don't know whether I'm brave enough. You already reported it. That didn't feel brave. Most brave decisions feel like nausea at first. She laughed. Naomi joined us. I walked toward the windows. The city stretched beyond the glass. Vale Urban Design's lights glowed across 4 floors below. The company remained a tenant. Grant's name no longer appeared anywhere. Not on the doors. Not on the project boards. Not on the annual report. The building did not change when he left. It became quieter. More honest. That was all. On the anniversary of my firing, Daniel brought breakfast to my office. He placed a small gift beside the coffee. Inside was a silver pendant shaped like a key. You already have too many keys, he said. This one doesn't open anything. I fastened it around my neck. That may be why I like it. He looked at the framed termination letter. Do you ever wish you had told Grant immediately that you owned the building? No. Why? Because then he would have behaved differently. That sounds useful. It would have been safer. I looked toward the floors Vale still occupied. But it would not have shown me who he was when he thought I had no power. That was the real lesson. People reveal themselves most clearly when they believe you need them more than they need you. Grant fired me on my wedding day because he believed timing gave him leverage. He thought the dress would make me emotional. The guests would make me embarrassed. The honeymoon would make me distracted. He believed I would sign anything to protect the appearance of a perfect day. Then he stood inside my reception and announced plans for a building he did not own. He used my dead mother's signature. Spent money that was not his. And told investors the landlord had approved everything. My lawyer called him. The audit chair opened the records. His own presentation screen displayed the email he tried to delete. And finally he asked what authority I had. I placed the brass key beside my wedding cake. That moment looked like revenge. But ownership alone did not defeat Grant. Documents did. Witnesses did. The employees who preserved evidence did. The board members who finally asked difficult questions did. And the woman he fired decided that keeping the peace was no longer more important than telling the truth. I did not inherit the Marlowe building because I was more deserving than anyone else. I inherited it because women before me protected it. My responsibility was not to use ownership the way Grant used authority. It was to create a place where people did not need to own the building before their concerns mattered. The day Grant fired me, he said I was no longer welcome there. 1 year later, my office door remained open on the 2nd floor. Not because I needed everyone to know the building was mine. Because no employee should have to wait until someone powerful discovers who they are before being treated with respect. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. What would you have done if your boss fired you on your wedding day, then discovered you own the building? Would you tell him immediately or let him finish the presentation first? Subscribe to her final move for more fictional stories about workplace betrayal, hidden ownership, intelligent revenge, and women who refuse to surrender their dignity.